Hi and welcome to Lois and Morgana Davidson Art. It's Lois here and this is what I'm painting today, this sort of moonrise scene with birds rising from the trees. It's really atmospheric and it all came out of a spontaneous painting wet in wet with no expectations, just slapping on two colours and seeing what happens, tipping and tilting, spraying the board and then taking advantage of the effects that occur naturally on the page. You can do this in your sketchbook or on the back of an old painting so that you don't waste paper, but it's a great way to loosen up and let go and just really enjoy the process of painting for the sake of painting, taking the pressure off yourself and just having some fun. I'm using Milford cold pressed watercolour paper. It's taped to my board and my board's at an angle of about 45 degrees, so gravity will help with the painting. I've just wet my page roughly all over, mostly the sky, a bit across the land, and then I'm going to introduce the first of my two colours, Cotman raw Sienna, just streaked across the middle of the page, and then onto the good stuff, Cotman Paynes grey, using a large flat bamboo Harkey style wash brush to apply the paint. Any big brush would do, the bigger the better here, because you just want the brush to apply the paint in this kind of spontaneous way and then just allow the water on the page and water from the water spray and tipping and tilting, just get it to produce some kind of really interesting and dramatic sky. This sort of thing can be so much fun and it can really take the pressure off yourself if you're feeling a little bit stuck and you don't know what to paint. Or if you've got a more planned painting that you want to paint, so you can sort of get rid of all that sort of built up tension in a painting like this, and then you feel much more relaxed to go into that sort of more planned painting. I've turned my board around and you can see that I'm helping the paint to flow in the direction that I want it to go. And this is a 3/4 inch flat brush, which is really useful just for coaxing the paint in the direction that it's already going and just helping it to continue to flow across the page in this kind of smooth way. As soon as I like the look of the paint, I flatten my board and then continue to work on it. The reason for putting the board flat now rather than having it at an angle means the washes will stay pretty much where they are. They will soften and diffuse and lighten back, of course, because that's what watercolour does, but they won't flow down the page anymore unless I pick it up and move the board around. Now this is nice thick rich Paynes grey and I've decided that I'm going to have a tree line there. The way that the paint has formed and flowed on the page has made me think of having a sort of distant spooky tree line with the sun just setting and maybe a moonrise coming out from behind that dark cloud top left. So I'm setting the scene for my trees first. Nice thick paint, softening it out, lightening it up towards the right. That should give me just a suggestion of distance. Just working on getting an interesting shape for my tree line. I'm wanting some soft edges and some hard edges, some lost and found edges. Trying to make sure I keep that lovely rich raw sienna glow above the tree line. And now this is a piece of plastic store card that I cut from a larger card. It's got a sort of pointed corner and I'm scraping it through the thick paint, and this is giving me thin lines, either dark lines or lighter lines, where I'm pulling it actually through the thick paint to reveal the paper underneath. And I'm using this to create the suggestion of my trees. It's a nice spontaneous way to very quickly create these loose and wild looking trees. And just to frame off the bottom of the painting, sweeping across some rich Paynes grey, getting some dry brush here and some nice thick paint as well, and then bringing up a few sort of straggly marks with the tips of the brush to maybe imitate grasses, and then again in with the corner of the card and scraping through that rich paint to give myself some beautiful weeds and grasses growing in the foreground. And I've almost set the scene. We've got the stormy sky, we've got the spooky trees, and I'm just going to wait for the paint to just dry off a little tiny bit in the foreground, and as soon as it's damp and not too wet, I can take some ordinary table salt, fine table salt, and sprinkle some into the foreground paint and some of the midground, and hopefully that will give me some lovely salt effects to suggest sort of flowers, fireflies, weeds, that sort of thing. And then I want to accentuate the look of the moon in the top left corner. So this is a penny, and I'm wrapping it in a piece of paper towel so that I've just got a round shape. Then I can just get this kind of silvery moon shape, and once that's dry I can put a little bit of the raw sienna over the silvery moon and maybe pull a cloud or two over it as well. So back in with the corner of the plastic card to put in a few more trees and branches, just tending those branches up towards the moon now that I've established its position. Then I'm going to get my brush again, my big wash brush, and dipping that into almost tube consistency, quite rich Paynes grey, and placing that over and around the branches that I etched in earlier, just to build up this sort of silhouette of more of the canopies of the trees, just to establish the shape of them, but making sure I keep that golden glow in the sky and that I don't cover that up completely. Now, using a small synthetic Da Vinci spin round brush, just pulling a cloud in front of the moon and a few more clouds, smaller ones, just hints of them across the sky. And now I need to leave it to dry completely, so I've laid it flat again. And here it is, completely dry. And I'm really pleased with the way it looks. The salt effects are absolutely gorgeous. They're just what I wanted. And I think just with a few little tweaks, the painting's almost finished. So let's zoom in, and using a small calligraphy brush, I'm just going to paint in a few birds, sort of breaking up from their roosts in the trees. I think they go really nicely against this stormy, windswept, moonlit night scene. Don't worry if you get something completely different if you have a go at this. That's what's going to happen. This sort of spontaneous painting each time will throw up slightly different opportunities. I think you just have to be open to sort of seeing something in the marks that occur on the page and then just trying to make something of them. Just a few more birds over in the paler sky over this side, and I think I'm almost finished. I'm dithering about whether to put a little bit of raw sienna over the moon just to give it a little bit more of a glow, but I'm going to have a look at the painting without the tape, with a clean white border, and this helps me to see it with fresh eyes and helps me to sort of step back and reassess the painting and see if I need to do anything else. So I've mixed up quite a watery glaze of raw sienna, and I'm going to glaze it lightly, mostly over the bottom part of the moon, just to warm that up a little bit and help to harmonise the moon with the glow across the rest of the sky. Now this is a clean damp brush, just making sure that there are no undissolved salt crystals left in the landscape. And that's it, the painting's finished. I'm really pleased with the way it looks, and I hope you like it too. I hope you'll give something like this a try. This really is a wonderful way to loosen up and to maybe just experiment if you're feeling a bit stuck, Or if you're a beginner and you're not used to experiencing the joy of wet in wet painting, this is a great way to practice and experiment, and it may take a few times for you to learn how to sort of adjust the board with the tipping and tilting, the thickness of the paint that's best to use for something like this, but it can be a really fulfilling way to paint. And as I say, it can really loosen you up, so you get rid of all that sort of pent up energy before you then settle down to work on a more planned painting. So I hope you liked this. If you did, please leave me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And thank you so much to my wonderful Patreon group who support this channel. So I'll see you again soon, and happy painting. Bye.